Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Lush Foliage. So some of you had asked me a question on when is the right time to sow seeds of hybrid marigolds. Now there are two types, one is the hybrid and one is the common variety. The common variety you can grow it throughout the year, there is not much of an issue. But when it comes to the hybrid marigolds, it is a little tricky, especially related with your environment and climate. If you are from a place wherein the temperatures are very high during summers, for example, some of my friends are from Delhi and the temperatures over there are above 40 degrees Celsius. So, of course, in such cases, you won't be able to grow your hybrid marigolds. They won't survive. Most probably, they might not even germinate because of the excess amount of heat. But in my city, as you can see, this is a hybrid marigold. It's called as the Marigold Superhero. And in my city, because my city has a very pleasant climate throughout the year, whether it's during summers or whether it's during winters, I tend to kind of sow the seeds throughout the year and they tend to germinate and they tend to put out flowers. Right now you can see my flowers have bloomed very well. Even despite being summers, because in my city the temperatures do not rise above 34 degrees Celsius or 35 degrees Celsius. Maximum it might reach up to 35 degrees Celsius, and that too only for a couple of days, and eventually it will start to rain and the temperatures will start to cool down. So whether it's monsoons, whether it's summers, whether it's winters, I don't have much issues in growing hybrid marigolds. They tend to grow throughout the year, whether it's summers or whether it's winters. But if you are from a very hot environment, then most probably it's better that you wait until the temperatures tend to cool down. The best time to sow the seeds would be during the monsoon season, when there is a good amount of humidity and the temperatures are a little low, and also the rate of germination is also going to be quite well. So it depends from environment to environment. For me, it tends to work out really well. Apart from that, whenever you tend to see the blooms or flowers on marigold, always remember you have to do a good amount of feeding. I tend to feed my marigold once a week with my compost tea diluted form once a week, and that tends to work out really well. Remember, whenever there are buds, whenever there are flowers, the plant expects a little bit more feeding. It tends to pull out more nutrients from the soil, so hence the nutrients level in the soil also starts to deplete. So you have to do a regular feeding, especially for the flowering plants when they are in their full bloom. Now, the talking about the pot size, because last time somebody had asked me that in order to grow flowering plants or any marigold or any flower, you need to have a very large pot. It's not compulsory. You can grow them in any pot size, ranging from 5 inches up to 7 inches. Now this particular one is growing in a smaller pot. Probably this is a thermocol pot. Probably it is around 5 inches in depth, and it tends to work out really well. Another important thing what I have noticed is, especially with these hybrid marigolds, they don't tend to grow very huge. They tend to stay very compact and small, and they tend to put out a lot of blooms, especially if the pot is small. Like last time when I had shown you the videos, all of the hybrid marigolds were in a 5-inch pot, and you have seen the amount of blooms that they had on them. So this is something that I have felt, that when the pot is small, the flowers tend to bloom even more. But of course, you also need to do the feeding accordingly. But larger the pot, again, it depends. My French marigold is in a 7-inch pot, and it tends to also bloom very well. But I have noticed that when the pot is small, the flowers also tend to come out more, probably because the plant is putting all its energy into blooming rather than putting its energy in growing roots, because the pot is very small. So the roots are smaller, but the flowers tend to come out more. But of course, again, as I said, you have to give a good amount of feeding. Apart from feeding, sunlight is the most important thing. Every flowering plant prefers a good amount of flowering. Probably there would be some exceptions, but marigold, you have to offer a good amount of morning direct sunlight for 5 to 6 hours. So all of my marigolds, whenever I tend to sow the seeds or whenever they are about to bloom or they tend to put out buds, I ensure that they all are east facing, wherein they get a good amount of morning direct sunlight for 5 to 6 hours. And after 12 noon, I tend to ensure that it is indirect bright light, because a lot of times the afternoon sunlight can be very harsh and it can damage the plant. So overall, in order to have a good amount of blooms on your marigold, or for that matter any other plant, there are two important things. One is You have to give a good amount of feeding for the plant. Apart from that, light is the most important thing. If the plant does not get a lot of light, then the amount of blooms will also reduce. So ensure you're keeping this thing in mind. When it comes to marigold, ensure you're giving a good amount of morning direct sunlight for 5 to 6 hours. The marigold will also do quite well in indirect bright light as well, but probably the amount of blooms are going to be comparatively less. And of course, if we are growing flowering plants, it goes without saying, we definitely are growing it for flowers. So if you want to have optimum amount of flowers on your marigold, then offer a good amount of morning direct sunlight. Talking about the soil mix, what I have felt is marigold is not very picky about the soil mix. They will tend to grow in any soil mix as long as the soil mix is well draining, it's loose and it's porous. So what I tend to do is, because my environment is very dry, I use around 10 to 20% of coco peat, garden soil and sand. So all of this mixture tends to work out really well. Again, as I said, they're not very particular or picky about the soil mix. They will do well in any soil mix as long as the soil mix is loose and well draining. You have to ensure that the soil drains out all the excess water. Otherwise, if there is excess water that tends to stay in the pot, then your marigold will get rotted. They will have a root rot. So excess water should drain out from the pot. So guys, apart from that, marigold is one of the most easiest plant, what I have felt, one of the most easiest flowering plant and tends to put out a lot of blooms. So if you are a person who tends to receive a good amount of morning direct sunlight, then this is one of the plant you can add it in your collection. No matter how dull your garden is, one small little plant of marigold can completely brighten up your garden. And this is something that I can say from my experience, because there was a time wherein I had only green colored plants. I did not have a lot of flowering plants. Everything was foliage plants, but there were a couple of marigolds that were growing and it was complementing so well with the green colored foliage. I absolutely loved the setup, and hence I kind of developed a lot of interest in marigolds because they are absolutely beautiful. And the colors of these marigolds tend to range from orange, tangerine, yellow. Now there are new hybrids that are coming out which are white in color, which are called as the polar marigold. I have got the seeds, I have planted the seeds, so I'm just waiting for them to show up. The white marigold also tends to look absolutely beautiful. I'm just waiting for the seeds to germinate. I think probably 3 or 4 days back I had put in the seeds. They haven't germinated yet, but I'm pretty excited and waiting for them to germinate. And once that happens, I will definitely share a video of it with you guys. So guys, that's all about it. I hope that this video was helpful to you. If it was, please hit the like button. And if you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing to it. Until then, take care, stay safe and keep planting.